Hello and welcome. We have an extremely special guest with us, Eric Schmidt, the Executive Chairman of Google. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
And for me too.
We will, of course, complain that this is the first time you've been to India. So anything particular that brings you out here? Or?
I was here in an earlier job, and India has grown so much. I don't think Americans are aware of how much growth, how much the country has changed. The new cars, the traffic jams, the excitement, the morale, it's fantastic.
Right, but of course challenges as well.
Of course.
I know Google has said that, and many people have said that one of the biggest things that we're going to see in India over the next 10 years, 15 years, young population, is going to be the explosion of the internet. Mm-hmm. So from your point of view at Google, this must be one of the countries which you've got your eyes most tightly focused on.
Yes, we do. India today is relatively underpenetrated on the internet. A relatively small number of broadband connections, perhaps 20 million, and still a relatively small number of internet users, perhaps 130 million, so roughly 10%. I cannot wait for another 500 or 600 million Indians to be heard, to express themselves, to get new ideas here on the Indian internet as it evolves.
Well, there are, of course, going to be differences in the way the internet will roll out here in India to the way it has in other places. For example, it could largely be on mobile devices and on handsets as opposed to being on the PC, as happened elsewhere. So a whole new different set of challenges, perhaps.
It seems to me, and to most people, that the internet in India will be a mobile internet, that the vast majority of people will have inexpensive handsets, so-called smartphones, and that's how they'll discover all of this amazing world. But they'll use those handsets for education, for entertainment, and especially for health information in ways that we cannot possibly imagine. The other thing I've learned about India is that it's majority different languages. It's not just an English country, obviously. And so the development of native language content, whether it's Hindi or the other languages, is another thing to look forward to.
But with so many different languages and such a diversity, there's bound to be a lot of stuff out there on the internet that is going to offend some people. And I know that's one of the things you've been concerned about. You wrote about it recently. That how do you manage this? What's the role between an intermediary and between the person publishing the content? How do you make sure that bad content is not out there? Can you ensure that bad content is not there?
Well, in the case of India, there are laws about hate speech and sort of bad content. And when we're notified of it, we will in fact take it down as per the Indian law. But in general, people are going to be heard. And usually the best answer to bad speech is more speech. In other words, our position is, let's hear from everybody. And the really bad stuff was likely to get buried by the amazing choices that people make, the colors and the culture of all of these people who are now joining our global conversation, if you will.
But I'm sure there's been a certain amount of concern that you have expressed on the role that an intermediary plays. I know the government has often come to you and to Facebook and to others and saying, look what's available on your platforms. What is the answer that you're giving to them?
It's important that the intermediaries, such as Google, not have any undue liability for this. So, for example, we can't pre-check everything that's submitted into the internet. There's no simple way of doing that. But when things are pointed out to us, we take them down within the required period of time. And as long as that's followed, we will be fine.
That's insofar as the intermediary principle goes,
Yes.
Because as you're saying, nobody can really monitor all the content that comes up. But there will be other cases where Google itself is putting content on. So is there a different set of rules and guidelines there?
Each of the sites that we offer, so for example, Blogger and YouTube have different terms of service. And in the case of Blogger and in YouTube, we actually do check that to make sure that things maintain the terms of service. In general, the internet tends to have a lot of voices people don't like to hear, but ultimately it represents humanity as a whole. It's better to see all of it, decide what you like and what you don't like. And if you don't like something, go ahead and make your own version. Go ahead and point out the falseness of what people are saying. Educate people that they're wrong and that you're right. Take the time to get your content and your point of view out there.
But I know one of the areas where the government has been somewhat concerned is, for example, on Google Maps or Google Earth, where actually you and perhaps only Google shows the whole of Arunachal Pradesh, which is an Indian state, as disputed, and parts of Uttaranchal and things like that. And I know the government has been saying you're following a practice that is different to what anyone else does, and will you do something about it? Is that the sort of thing that you think could eventually get Google into a certain amount of difficulty with the government?
I certainly hope not. With respect to maps, we have a single global approach that we take to the global maps. And within the country, if there's a disputed region, we will show it within the country along the lines that the country thinks the right answer is. We try not to endorse any particular view. We're not the arbiter of these things. There are, in fact, United Nations groups that try to do this. We simply try to reflect, when there's a dispute, what each side believes.